Hi, Steve Riley. Welcome to Great Practice, Great Life. And today we're going to combine the great life and great practice conversation, and we're going to bring in my favorite workaholic, Kimberly Lee. Kimberly, welcome to the podcast.
Well, glad to be here, Steve.
So I like to have Kimberly here because Kimberly is one of the hardest working people I know. And we did a whole other podcast called The Power of Not Yet Projects, where I think, Kimberly, how long was it before you actually had a day off? Like, was it like a 15-year window, something like that?
Oh yeah, it was just somewhere around there. I didn't know what it meant to take time off or have a vacation because why take vacation? Because you have work to do,
Yeah, it works
right?
too. Well, it's true. I mean, you grew up in a Chinese household. My mother's German and my dad's Irish. And I was thinking in preparation for this podcast, it's probably 15 years of practice before I took a day off, like straight through,
Hmm.
like 15 years of practicing um, and working. And I don't think I had a day off in 15 years, kind of thing. So it was counter to what I was raised and counter to my training as a young lawyer. Lawyers don't take time off. That's for wimpy lawyers, I guess. So so let's you started, and we talked in the prior podcast. If you guys haven't listened to the prior podcast, The Courage of Not Yet, I encourage you to go listen to it, because Kimberly talks about the distinction of what she's called not yet projects, which in itself is fun. But one of the things I want to bring you on the podcast today to talk about was what I've kind of coined the phrase around your great life adventure. And there are two levels to this. So as you listen to the podcast, I want you to listen to how Kimberly developed skills and processes to take time off. And then I want Kimberly to talk in addition to that, like what she did and why this was an adventure. Because some lawyers are like, when we give them a challenge to take a sabbatical or time off, they're like, I got nothing interesting to do. I don't know how to do it. I'm not going to do it. So you have to meet with your firm and say, okay, I'm going to be gone for 3 months or 6 months. We got 90 days to prepare. What are all the things that you're concerned about? What all do we have to plan for? Because it usually starts to talk about the dependency. And it also talks about the key strategic delegations you need to make during the time period that you're gone. So it's a fantastic way of doing it. What else did you do?
I think part of it is not only do I have to prepare myself mentally, but prepare the team's mindset as well as the practical aspects of it. From the Excel project exercise, and thank you for explaining. I'm sorry I used it without recognizing that a lot of listeners may not know what it is.
You're so
Um,
critical of yourself. It cracks me up. Quit being so critical of yourself. Just keep talking.
And from there, then we come up with solutions, and some of the solutions requires action items. Then we turn those into projects so that we can get those implemented. And then we do the dress rehearsal. Then we meet after the first 30 days to look at what worked well and what didn't work well, and what additional issues that came up that we didn't think about during the initial meeting.
That's great. So there's two levels of this for me. So one is the operational elements of the firm. One of the things for me when I would take time off and exiled myself from my own firm, and I've done it inside of Atticus. One of the big things is the emotional impact for me personally of making myself less important inside the context of the business. Like, making, and it seems like I invalidate my importance in my own head to the firm. Like I try and say, well, I'm so important, I can't take time off. And it's one of the things that you and I call the hero of the story. Um, when you did this, how did your team react to you? Because you're such a hard worker, you've worked so hard. How do they respond to you saying, I'm going to take a block of time off?
Initially, they didn't believe me. They just
Right.
thought, okay, sure, great. I'll call you when we need you. So in their mind, Kimberly taking time off is basically Kimberly working remotely.
Perfect. Yep.
And so the first time that it happened, I had to sit down and go through with them as to what is deemed as emergency. Emergency is not if the building burns down, because I'm not a firefighter. Calling me is not going to help. Call 911, call the fire department. So we have to agree as to what is considered an emergency. So it helps them to make their judgment call, because they want to do a good job and they want to do well during my absence, but they need the tools to be able to make those judgment calls, and not have the fear that if they make the wrong judgment call, their job security will be impacted.
So for me, it's kind of like exercising or anything else in life. You start small and work your way up. So when you first start taking time off, what was a typical time off window? 1 day, 2 days, a week?
In the beginning, I was taking 1 day off, a week. And I'm talking about a day that you don't check email, you don't do any work whatsoever. No secret sneaking, doing stuff on the side stuff. Then I increased to like 2 days. Then I start taking time off, as in away from our home. So normally we'll take a week off, but I'll add the weekends in the beginning and the end. So that makes it, 9 days, almost 9, 10 days off.
That's good.
So that was very common. Then we did 2 weeks plus the weekend. So now we're looking at, like almost 20 days. And then I increased that to like 2.5 weeks, and then increase that to 30 days.
Yep. And so there was a learning process. And this is one of the things that a lot of lawyers, when they first start doing this, they think that we're recommending that they just immediately take a month off. No, there's a learning process. So how did you get your team? I mean, for you, I guess some of it's you. How did you adjust your habits, your use of your phone, things like that when you start taking time off? What did you do?
In the beginning, it was very challenging because all my office, software apps are all on my phone, and they're easily accessible on my first page because that's what I use every day. And so when I start taking time off, it was like a drug addict. It's like my phone was like the drug that I couldn't get away from. So I came up with a strategy to combine all my apps and put it into a folder, and then put it on the last page of my phone desktop. And now it's still there. And I'm the one who hid it there. So I know where it is, but it gives me a, 4-second head start before I get there to stop myself.
More money, more this, more that. Way to go for it. Way to honor your father. It's a big deal. And if there was a leopard out there listening, what would you tell that leopard at this point in their life? If you could talk to that young leopard who was struggling with how to kill because they lost their mother, what would you tell that leopard?
I would tell the leopard, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be okay. You'll figure it out.
Yep. Have the courage. Just keep going.
Courage and keep going. Beautiful.
One thing that, the other thing that I found that from this trip was that, we had to drive through one camp to the other camp. And we saw so much poverty and the disparity in wealth levels. In a different time and place, we will be traveling there. We're like kings and queens of the world. We take so much for granted in this country, and we fight over stupid stuff, the politics and this and that. There are so many places in this world that they just want to get clean water. There are people with a wheelbarrow wheeling down the road so they can have water to drink that day. We're so spoiled, in this world, and most of our problems are first world problems.
Yeah, they really are. And I'm with you. It's one of the things that left me um, somewhat scarred and overwhelmed with gratitude, was seeing how so many different countries and cultures were struggling to get by. And when we're arguing, at least in the media, over very silly little things, where I'm like, really? That's the biggest crisis today? When somebody somewhere else is just trying to figure out how to get the water for their kids or food for their kids, or just, having medication for the kids, or somewhere safe
Right.
to sleep that night. Um, you know, uh, some time that I spent in Rio and sometimes in South America, some of the poverty down there was shocking, and you don't appreciate it till you're there. You actually see it, and then you realize our poorest here live like they're wealthiest there. And when you have that contrast, you really have a shocking understanding of what real poverty is here. America's just an amazing place. And, your story, one of hard work, coming here from Taiwan and learning English and being as successful as you are, the leopard that you are, is in itself a incredible story. And it is what makes this country great, not to get too preachy about it, but it takes a great person like you to come here and have a great vision, a great courage to, do what you've done. It's pretty amazing. It really is. So, Kimberly, thanks. Thanks for being on the podcast. Thanks for being you.
Thank you for having me.
It's been all my pleasure. Thank you, my dear.